Welcome to I'm a Perfectionist, Get Me Out of Here, where we are all allowed to be perfectly imperfect. I'm Eileen Webb. I'm a psychologist, CBT and EMDR therapist, anxiety mastery coach, author of 4 books, and podcaster.
Hello, John, and welcome to I'm a Perfectionist, Get Me Out of Here. It's just so wonderful to have you here. I just can't tell you how inspired by your story I am.
I'm super excited. We had a quick call the other day to check in and I love your passion. I love your vision for helping others and for getting visionaries on your podcast to, help the creative consciousness get out of their own way. So I'm honored to be here with you.
Back at you. So when we last talked, we mentioned that we would start by telling our audience why they should listen to us today, what they would be getting out of our conversation today. What would you say
So,
to them?
yeah, so first of all, they're going to learn a little bit about me, the man, the myth, the legend. And kind of my journey, what I went through to get to the other side, to find joy and fulfillment in almost every day I live. They're going to get some key pieces of my coaching program, some of the key steps that I use to empower other people who find themselves stuck in their life and without motivation and direction. And if you get to the end of the podcast, you're going to get a link to download my new best-selling book called Playing the Hand You Were Dealt, which has a foreword by a close friend of mine, Jamie Lee Curtis. So stick to the end.
I saw Jamie Lee Curtis really just promoting this book and you as well as a wonderful friend. To the audience, I'll say you really want to stay for this story because John's story is just so amazing and so inspirational that no matter what, you will get so much out of it. And without further ado, let's let's just start by asking you about your story. I know it. I watched the documentary, which is amazing, incredible documentary. And Jamie Lee Curtis is in it as well. I know too.
Yes.
And it's
You
telling
can
you.
even standing behind me, hugging me.
Oh, could she hug me too? Uh, so let's hear your story from you, John.
Okay. So I grew up in Los Angeles to two wonderful professional parents. They were both attorneys. An only child. I guess they say they broke the mold when I came out. And I gravitated towards hanging out with adults more than kids my age. For whatever reason, there weren't a lot of kids that I identified with.
Mm.
So I became wiser in my growing up years because I was around adults. But I built a computer consulting company, got involved in doing theater. There were no limitations on my life when I was a kid. I was a dreamer. I was able to just close my eyes and imagine what I wanted to do, and then I just did it. I wasn't sitting around waiting for someone to say, "Yes, you can do that, John." I just did it. That's how I lead my life, feeling that
That's what
it's
I love
better
about
to ask
you.
for forgiveness than permission. And
Yeah.
trust me, that can bite you in the butt a couple times. But it gave me the most wonderful opportunities that I would never have had if I didn't just grab life by the horns and pursue those experiences.
Mm.
And many of those experiences are documented in this book, along with pictures and video links that you can go to my website and see some of the amazing things that I've been able to do. So life was going really well. I started a computer consulting company. Being in Los Angeles, I dealt with a lot of celebrities
May
and
I just take you back? There was,
mhm.
you had a in your during your childhood there was bullying in school, wasn't there?
Yeah.
You
You
were
know,
bullied.
I was on a bus. I went to a private school from kindergarten through 12th grade.
Hmm,
And there was a point where on our bus there were bullies.
yeah.
And they would beat me up. They would, you know, be mean to me.
Hmm.
I didn't know why I attracted those kind of people. Um, I have to think that I exuded that I was special because of my mindset, and they wanted to be the center of attention. So they wanted to tear me down because they were potentially, you know,
Not good enough so that they could
yeah, just
by putting
intimidated by
you
me and who
by
I had become. Because again, I lived every day grasping for new opportunities. I never accepted the word no until I had tried to do whatever it is that I was doing. So yeah, I got beat up and I got even with some of the bullies. Some bullies moved away. I remember a story real quickly when I was living on a street. I was probably 10 years old, and there were two bully kids living one on either side of me, and they were older. And so every time I come out of the house to play, they would all of a sudden see me through their windows and decide they were going to have some fun, and they would chase me. What would I do? I would run, because I didn't want them to catch up with me in case they were going to try to hurt me and beat me up. And that went on for a couple years. And then I remember sitting down with my parents. And my parents said, John, we got a surprise for you. We're moving this Saturday. And the moving trucks are coming. We're going to a bigger house. And in that moment, I said, huh. So that next time I walked out Saturday morning before the moving trucks there, I made myself present and made sure the bullies could see me. And like clockwork, they came out and they did their and started chasing me, and I just stood my ground. And they were put off by that. They got nose to nose and stopped. And one of them said, "Wait a minute, this isn't fun anymore."
yeah, exactly.
And turned around and walked away.
Hmm.
And I'll
What
never forget. I walked in.
what
I
do you think made you decide that day to do something different, exactly the day that you were moving?
I was ready to take down whatever beat down they were going to give me if that was going to happen. It's like today is the day to stand. I won't have to deal with it tomorrow because we're moving.
Hmm.
So I remember after standing my ground and just saying, do whatever you want because it's your last chance because I'm moving. And they were like, yeah, all right. Well, the chase is what was fun. This isn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
And I
There's
remember walking into my parents and telling my mom that story over breakfast. And I remember saying, why did I wait so long?
mm,
It was just, I don't know why I waited so long. I was scared. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I was fearful of the unknown.
exactly. Of course you were a child, John, and the bullies, they are the ones that actually deep down they know they're not good enough, and by putting somebody else down they feel a bit better about themselves, they feel as if they are above somebody, but then they go back. It's only temporary relief. After a short period of time they start feeling bad about themselves again, they start feeling they're not good enough, and then they have to start bullying again, and the cycle just keeps on.
I
It's
think I
actually
think it's that they saw me as a leader. They saw me as a creative individual who had dreams, and they were intimidated by that.
Yeah.
And they wanted to just tear me down to make themselves feel better.
Yeah. Exactly.
And this
Exactly.
is coming from someone who's going to turn 60 in a week. So it took me a long time to come to that realization that that indeed was why they were chasing me.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, bullying followed me to the new house, to new schools, to new everything.
Mhm.
But now I had an appreciation for standing your ground and being who you are, not being who what other people think you should be. And the bullies, forget about them because you will attract others who are inspired by your strength and by your self confidence.
Exactly. That was what I was coming to. How did that moment of them coming to you and you standing your ground and they were like, "Oh, this is not fun anymore." How did that affect your confidence in yourself?
Yeah, I mean, this is all in reflection of 50 years plus years ago, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's in the moment where I realized that it was up to me to make my life great. I was the one to look at life as an opportunity to succeed,
Mm.
and failure was not an option. Failure was simply an opportunity to try a different method, to try a different track, because failure is not permanent until you die.
So fail and try, fail and try, fail and
Yeah,
fail and try, fail and succeed. That's the only way. That's the only way. Failing is
yeah,
good
and
for
we
us.
all do that
It's
in our
really
daily lives, and
good.
some are successful, and some have supported people along the way, and some people have to do it on their own.
We
But
love failing. That
it,
that's the only path to success. In that period of time, when did Uncle Milton show up at your door, showing you, opening up a completely new world?
I think I used to know my grandmother. My grandmother had retired, or my grandfather, who I never got to meet, was the creative genius in the gene pool.
Mhm.
And he died the year I was born. And so my grandmother moved to a local hotel who she knew the owner. And the owner said, just move here. You'll have room service, you'll have food service. We'll make your bed. You won't have to worry about a thing. And you just
Sounds nice.
pay us what the rent would cost you if you rented your own apartment and were living alone. And so
Mhm.
she took him up on the offer, and I would visit her almost every weekend. And they kind of treated me like their mascot. Little Johnny's running around. And one of my favorite stories is that for my, I don't know, eighth birthday, my grandmother gave me an autograph book because this hotel was in Studio City, right next to all the Hollywood studios.
Mhm.
And so every time a celebrity would come in to check into the hotel, the guy at the front desk would go to my grandmother's box where she kept her mail and keys in the lower right hand corner of this set of boxes and pull out the autograph book and say, "Hey, we've got a little boy who runs around here. He's a grandson of one of our great guests, and would you mind signing this autograph book?" And of course, they would sign this autograph book. And then when I would visit my grandmother and there was a celebrity in the hotel, then I would go and get the autograph book and go up to them and ask for their signature. One funny story. So one day, my grandmother and I were having lunch in the coffee shop, and my grandmother sees this gentleman walk in and sit down at the counter. She said, "Johnny." By the way, she's the only one who could call me Johnny. I would let it. Otherwise, it's John to everybody
No
else.
one is allowed. Yeah.
So she said, "Johnny, go get your autograph book. Go up to that man ask him for his autograph and say, your grandma says he's going to be famous one day. Sure. So I got up, I ran and got the autograph book. I went in, walked up to the gentleman, waited till he recognized there was someone there. I said, sir, my grandma in the corner, she says, you're going to be important one day and I should get your autograph. I get your autograph with my autograph book. And he signed it. He said, thank you. And I walked back to the table. And as I looked at the autograph book, it said, thank you for asking, Marvin Hamlish.
Wow.
So he was the amazing music composer who composed The Sting, was one of my favorite movies. And she had seen him on one of the daily talk shows. I think it was the Michael Douglas show that day. And he was just done filming.
Mm.
And she recognized it and knew that he was going to be famous one day. I share that story. I share the story about how I got into trouble trying to break into the semi trailer of Evil Knievel's semi because I was only interested in keys, and I would every time I'd look on the ground and I see a key, I'd add it to my key ring. And one day I get to my grandmother's, and the parking lot's full of this semi trailer filled with motorcycles and all his traveling equipment. As I'm going around there, and I look, and right at the top of the cab, there's a little key hole. And I'm like, darn, I think one of my keys would fit that. And so, without thinking, I just reached up on my tippy toes and put that key in, and it got stuck because of
Mm.
the angle I'm putting it. So now I'm there standing flat footed on the ground going, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get in trouble. And so I'm jumping up and down trying to get that key out of the lock. And all of a sudden, hear a voice from behind. What are you doing, kid?
Oh.
And I turn around, and it's Evil Knievel himself. And I was just honest. I said, Mr. Knievel, I collect keys. And I noticed that I had one look just like the lock that you had. And I thought maybe if I put it in, it would turn. And he smiled. He removed the keys from the lock, handed it to me. He said, you know, you remind me a lot of me as your age. And then he asked me the question every kid wants to know. Answer, are you hungry?
Great
And we went
question.
into the coffee shop and he bought me burger and fries and we sat there talking and he told me these amazing stories of some of the jumps that he had done and some of the
Amazing.
and a week later the front desk gave my dad a call and said, next time you bring John, there's something here for your son at the desk. So he came in and there was a huge portrait of him jumping, a poster of him jumping the Snake River with a picture and a personal signature to me. I mean, it probably cost him a couple $100 to put that together. And
That's so cool. Do you still have it, John?
I do. I do indeed.
That is
And
so
there's a
cool.
picture of it in my book. Um,
Okay.
and it's just a sign of some amazing,
People you came across through your lifetime so far, isn't it? Just to take you back to where we were with your successful business, and then something happened, right? Everything was
yeah.
going so well, and you built up this
I
business.
didn't want for anything. I had lovely family. I had loving friends, lifelong friends. I was in school. I was called a lifer because I went from kindergarten through 12th grade. My university experience was my second school ever.
Hmm.
So I was happy. I had friends around me. I had gotten into theater and so forth. And then I went to college to study theater and was working on a playwright festival. And the lighting designer was an outside person who worked for a commercial production company in Los Angeles. And I developed some computer skills because Buckley, which was the high school, had a lot of money. And so they had purchased for the use of the students and faculty a mainframe. And so I got to learn how to use that mainframe. And I asked my parents one Christmas for a copy of the administrator manual for that book, of that computer system. Like $300. But my parents were like, if John wants to read a book, we're going to buy it for him. So I studied and learned how to use it and so forth. And that got me into trouble. But anyway, that's another story for another time. But it was, my life was just filled with opportunity, filled with new experiences. And so I built this computer consulting company, and it was going well being in Los Angeles. I had a lot of celebrities as clients, and I would be the one to go out and provide them service. And that's how I met my friend Jamie Lee Curtis. And then all of a sudden, in July of 2002, I started having symptoms of something that I didn't know what it was. They started out as not being able to hear properly out of my left ear. Men's voices were garbled. Women's voices were okay. And I went to an ENT to get checked out, and they did hearing tests and said, no, we don't find anything wrong.
Oh, so in the beginning they couldn't find anything in.
No, I
Right.
remember, I remember, I think I remember them saying, it's all in your head.
Right.
And so that got a little bit worse, but then I started getting dizzy.
Mm.
The point where every standing moment was dizzy, and I had to hold on for dear life. Otherwise, I'd fall. It was like vertigo. And then I found another ENT part of my medical plan, and I went and saw him. And here's audiologist fresh out of school did a hearing test that they don't do anymore. It's called a hearing decay test. And the way you do that is normal hearing tests, they play a tone, you put your hand up, you stop hearing the tone, you put your hand down. But a hearing decay test, they put your hand up when you hear the tone, and then you put your hand down when you stop hearing the tone. So we're in this soundproof booth, and I can see the audiologist through the window, and she says, "Okay, I'm going to play a tone," and I put my hand up, and then the tone stops, and I put my hand down, and all of a sudden her eyes bug out, and she says, "John, can we do that again?" I'm like, "Yeah." She plays the same tone, and I put my hand up, and I put my hand down, and she says, "John, I'm still playing the tone." And she excused herself and got on the phone with her professor in audiology school and related the what had happened during my test. And he diagnosed me as having an acoustic neuronal brain tumor over the phone without even seeing me.
Mm.
So then the process of going to get the MRI and being claustrophobic and having to deal with that. So that took a couple of weeks. And I remember after the ordeal was over and I went to the front desk and I said to the receptionist, how much for those films you just printed? And the receptionist said, no, 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 those go to the radiologist and he'll read them the next couple of days and then send a report to the audiologist or to your doctor. And then he'll call you and you'll have a meeting about it. And I said, no, you don't understand. I want those films. You can print another set for the radiologist. I want to take those with me. And she got on the phone and called her administrator, and they said $300. So I handed her my credit card, and she charged me $300. And I took those films back to my ENT, walked in the office without an appointment. And fortunately, he saw the concerned look on my face through the window, and he said, "All right, John, I got a few minutes. Come on in." And I went in, and he took the first MRI film and put it up in the light board, and the color drained from his face. And he turned around and he said, "John, um, I think I see something. And I'm not the guy you want to deal with. So I'm going to make an appointment with a specialist in downtown LA." And he managed to call them and get me scheduled the very next day. And he said, "Take these films with you and let me know how it goes." So I had a horrible night of sleep, got up bright and early, went down to the ear clinic downtown, got in front of the neurosurgeon and the uh, otologist, they call it, and they looked at the first MRI film and they conversed back and forth and didn't even know need to go to the second film. They just pulled it down and the neurosurgeon left and my otologist got on the phone and talked to his nurse and then turned around and said, John, you have a 4.5 centimeter acoustic neuroma. It is growing and it's killing you by displacing your brainstem. I spoke to my scheduling nurse and we were pushing other patients. And you are being operated on a week from today. It's going to be a 16-hour procedure. You're going to go deaf in your left ear. There's no chance in saving your hearing. And there's a slight possibility that after surgery you'll have some facial weakness. But we'll do everything in our power to prevent that. And they left the room. And I remember sitting on the examining table, with the tissue paper under your bum, you know,
Yeah, yeah, I
you
know
know.
that.
I mean,
It's
I
everybody
just
listening.
remember every experience. I remember the temperature in the room. I remember everything. And I'm sitting there, and I didn't take anybody with me. Big mistake.
Yeah.
Whatever you're going to have, you're going to go and you expect some kind of diagnosis. Take a friend or family member to take notes and listen to what the doctor said because you're going to have so many questions because you're going to be in shock. And again, I took my took my future in my hands and I went out and followed the voice of this doctor. And I found him in an examining room uh, talking to another patient. And I said, "Excuse me, doctor, we weren't done." And I literally led him back to the
I
examining
wouldn't
room.
have thought so. Did he think you were done and he just left? I thought they
And I
were coming back. They just left you there, did they?
just left me there to just, yeah,
That is amazing. That's just so
no
awful.
bedside manner at all.
Um, so awful.
Yeah. And
I
I made
can't
that very clear
imagine.
to him that was not okay, that I had
No.
questions. And so we spent 5 minutes and he said, okay, you're going to come back for some hearing tests in a week,
Mm,
or in a couple of days, actually, because the surgery was going to be in a week.
yeah.
You'll go for your pre-op. I'll make sure I'm there. And any questions you have, I can answer them then. And then left.
How many years ago was this, John?
That was in 2002.
So
And
it's
now we're in 2025.
really bad bedside manners,
Yeah.
I say.
Horrible. Horrible.
In your most vulnerable, shocked state,
Yeah.
probably of your life. And,
And
oh,
then so I had a date to meet my parents for lunch because they wanted to know what had happened. So I
yeah.
put on my stoic face and walked in and sat down at the table and my mom especially like, okay, John, what did he say? And I'm like, well, I really don't remember what he said. All I know is I'm going in for surgery in a week and it's going to be a 14 to 15 hour surgery
Mm.
and I'll be in the hospital a week. And if I do well, I'll be able to come home after a week and it'll take 3 to 6 months to feel like myself again. And I'm going to lose my hearing in my left ear. I'm just rattling things off. The
Yeah.
things I could remember, the
On
things that,
survival mode by
yeah.
the sounds of it.
And my
Just
mom and dad are like sitting like, what are you talking about? You're going to go deaf in your left ear. You're going to have brain surgery. And, they said, part of the procedure is, when we remove this tumor, it's the size of a golf ball. It's fairly large. And
mm.
what we do is we go into your belly and make an incision and they remove your own belly fat. And we use that to plug the hole so that your brain has slowly be able to assimilate the fat as opposed to having a void.
Oh my
Right.
goodness. I didn't know
And,
that. I mean, why would I know that? But that
yeah.
is
And I have this sense of
incredible.
humor. So I said to the doctor when he said that, can you take it all? And they said, no, no, sorry, that's not our job. And I
Like
said,
this.
darn.
Yeah.
And just those are the things that I remember from the conversation.
Mhm.
I didn't remember timelines, but
No.
days passed so quickly. I was running a business. I had to get one of my guys who was actually about to leave the company and move to Oregon. And I had to plead with him to delay his leaving. And I had to pay for him being able to stay another month to take over the business while I recuperated. And he gladly did. He was a good guy, and I still am in touch with him. And this is 30 years ago. But I got all my affairs in order, and my parents and I went to dinner the night before, and we got to the hospital, and they did all sorts of tests and said, "Okay, get some sleep." Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And 6 a.m. the next morning, the orderly came in and said, "Okay, get undressed, get in this gown, and get on top of this gurney." And he started rolling me down the hallway, and I remembered how cold that gurney was.
It's been so scary as well, John. I can't imagine
And
how
you're
scary.
looking up, and all you're seeing these fluorescent light fixtures as you're rolling down the hallway.
Yeah.
And we get to the floor where the pre-op area was, and all of a sudden, this woman puts her head into my face. She's wearing a mask. So all I can tell is she's African American. She said, "John, my name is so and so. I'm your anesthesiologist." And unfortunately, my office just called me saying that my services are, well, unfortunately, not covered by your insurance. So here's a form that I need you to sign to say that you will pay for my service. So there I am, lying stark naked under a sheet, ready to
Yeah.
be rolled into an operating room, and a doctor is giving me a clipboard to sign. Well, fortunately, my parents were attorneys, and I learned a lot about the law, and I knew that that would be signing under duress. So I knew I would never, ever have to pay that bill. So with a smile on my face, I gladly signed it because
Yeah.
she had my life in her hands. I didn't need to start a
They,
battle then. That's not good. So they roll. I remember the nurse says, "Okay, we need to shave half your head. You want me to do it now or when you're under?" I'm like, "Do it while I'm under, please." She just said, "Okay." And the next thing I know, they're saying, "Okay, count backwards, 5, 4," and I'm out. And then the next thing I know, I wake up in surgical recovery.
mhm.
And it was like I was in a pool, 50 meters. And I heard muffled, "John, John." And it was like I had to swim to the surface to get out of the anesthesia. And it was literally a struggle to get conscious. And after a couple of minutes, I finally came to, and there I am in the hospital room, and I had no pain. And the first thing I realized is the dizziness had gone. So I'm relieved. I'm like, wow, it worked. But because I could feel my face, I had no idea that coming out of surgery, my face was paralyzed, right? So my dad was standing or sitting on the side of my bed holding my hand. My dad had this great smile, ear to ear. And he was like, "Johnny, okay? How you feeling?" I'm like, "I'm exhausted, but I think I'm okay. Where's mom?" And my dad passed me my glasses to see. And I remember the first thing is I tried to put my glasses on, and my head's bandaged. So I'm like, my glasses don't fit. So I have to figure out how to get the glasses between my head and the bandage to be able to think. And I look across the room, and my mom is standing there with a look of horror on her face. And what's going through her mind is, what did these butchers do to my poor son's face? And in that moment, I realized that something was wrong. And my mom handed me her compact mirror she used to touch up her makeup.
Mm.
And I briefly looked into the mirror and saw the left hand side of my face and closed it and gave it back. And then the next time the doctor came in, I said, what's going on with my face? He said, John, don't worry. Um, when we were closing the incision, you lost the ability to move your face, but we have every expectation when the swelling goes down, um, that will uh, that will repair that, and you'll be able to smile again. I was like, okay, I can be patient. So I spent the week in the hospital, and they said, you need to be able to walk without a walker 2 or 3 laps around the floor until we'll let you go home. So that was my goal. I needed
Mm.
to get up first with the aid of a walker, and then ditching the walker to be able to walk 3 laps around the floor. And I remember going to the charge nurse and saying, "Okay, I did my three laps. Let me out of here." They called my dad, and my dad came and picked me up and took me home. And I'm sitting on my couch. I had a longtime friend there to stay with me for the first week, because I had no energy. I was constantly having to take naps, and my head's still
Oh,
bandaged
you just
and
came out of 16-hour
16
brain
hours surgery.
surgery. It's not surprising you didn't have energy. Come on.
And then I coughed. And
Mm,
I felt something wet on the back of my neck.
right.
And I was thinking it was blood, but no, it was a clear liquid. So I called the hospital. I called the ENT's office and said, "Hey, I coughed and this happened." They went, "Get your ass back here right now."
Right.
Dad, I need to go back to the hospital. So he dropped what he was doing and came and picked me up. And I had developed this spinal fluid leak from the base of the incision, which was right behind my left ear.
Mm,
And so they tried to put a new pressure bandage on because the spinal fluid was keeping the incision from healing. It was keeping it moist.
yeah.
And so they tried to bandage it again and hope for the best. And I got home, and the next day I coughed and it started dripping again. And that went 2 or 3 times. And finally, we went back to the hospital and said, "Look, you need to fix this once and for all." So they said, "Okay. So tomorrow we're going to put you under again. And it'll only be for like a half hour to an hour. But we're going to go in, we're going to pull more belly fat out and repack the incision and put staples in this time instead of sutures to make sure it sticks."
Yeah. Exactly.
And then I got home, and at that point my head's all gunky, and I decide, what the hell, I'm going to take the bandages off and take a look. And it was like Frankenstein. I had these half-inch staples
Mm,
all the way up from the under my ear, all the way to this front side of my head.
yeah.
And
So some of the pictures on the documentary, actually.
yeah, it
If you
was,
have if you have some of those footages, I'll put them here. Maybe
yeah, we can take
anything that you
screenshots.
want me to put here, we can edit into
Yeah,
the people who are watching on YouTube, they can also see some of the things that we are talking about. But that I can't even imagine how it must have been for you taking those bandages off and seeing what had been done, how your
yeah.
head looks like, your skull. Yeah.
And every time I would go to brush my teeth, you look in the mirror when you're brushing your teeth, and
Mm.
I didn't like the reflection. So I called some friends, and they came over, and we removed every mirror from my house because I didn't want to be constantly reminded of my face. I wanted it just to heal. And
How
so I
did you
stopped.
feel? How did you feel about yourself when you were
My
seeing?
life was over. My
Mhm.
life was over as far as I was concerned. I mean, I was in a service business. I would go out and meet clients, and they were hiring me. They weren't hiring my team. They were hiring John Kippen because of what I had accomplished and all of the recommendations I had gotten. And I had the personality to convince them to take a risk and take a chance on my company.
So what do you think would change with the way that your look changed? Do you think, or did you think that they would then not want to work with you because,
I didn't know.
yeah.
I didn't know, but I was scared to find out.
Mm.
So there I am recuperating after 3 or 4 weeks. I remember going down to the House's ear clinic downtown for my month checkup. And I had told the doctor when they redid the incision that my dad was an attorney and he dealt with medical malpractice.
Mm. Oh,
I let that
how
slip.
convenient.
I let that slip.
Uh-huh.
And so I drove down the month after for my month follow-up. And I walk into the examining room and he's like, "Where's your dad?" He said, he didn't come with me today. He said, "Well, how'd you get here?" And I said, "I drove." He goes, "You drove? You're not supposed to be driving." And I said, "Well, you never mentioned that." So he kind of said, "All right, whatever, as long as you're able to drive, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But make sure you say hi to your dad for me." And I could tell that he could care less about me. He wanted to make sure that my dad knew that he asked for him. So anyway, that just one of those things that just
Mm.
irks me because
Yeah.
I'm the patient. But, from day one, he showed a total disregard as me as a human being.
Yes, I can't
I was
believe
a piece of
all
meat on the
the
table.
diagnosis and walked out without any
Yeah.
question,
To
explanation.
him, I was a paycheck. I was just a piece of meat that he was going to cut into.
So you picked. So then, what happened? This is such a life changing event and a matter of life and death and big such a big change in your life where you face death. I would think
Yeah,
that
exactly. I
where
mean,
you face mortality, where you realize, my goodness, I'm not going to live forever. Even though I'm young, my life could have finished or can finish through this operation or completely change forever. And after the operation, it did change. And then what happened, John? And then
well,
what?
they made it clear, first of all, they made it clear that if I didn't have surgery, I'd be dead because the brain stem would be displaced and I would stroke out and I would lose my life. And they were saying weeks to a month before that happened.
Mhm,
So the surgery was emergent. That was the only option at that point.
mhm,
But, as I started to heal and I started to get really bored watching TV all day
mhm,
and doing an occasional computer work and talking to clients on my phone on my good ear now, I was bored. So I'm a semi-professional poker player. So I would drive to a card club and I'd go in. And I learned something interesting. When I sat at a poker table, none of the other players could care less about my face. They just wanted to win my money. But I started making friendships with degenerate gamblers. And those weren't the people that I wanted to surround myself with. So I stopped playing poker, stopped going down there, and
and
uh,
also, it didn't help your bank account, you were
no,
mentioning.
it didn't help my bank. But I
Okay.
wasn't. I made good money at the time. I was pulling in good money, and so I never would play with money I couldn't afford to lose. And I played for the psychology of it. One of the players that would come and play with me was Don Adams from the old Get Smart series, Agent 86. For some of your listeners, you can Google him. And it was a comedy series about his bumbling detective. Um, and he had many famous lines. One was, "Missed it by that much." So he and I are in a hand together, and we're playing Texas Hold'em, and he at the end of the hand, he has missed his straight by one card. And I turn to him and I say, "All right, Don, seems like you missed your straight by that much." And we became lifelong friends after that. He was just, that was the kind of personality I had. I didn't care that he was a famous actor. I was just having fun and thought he'd get a laugh out of that, and he did.
You also have been surrounded by celebrities almost all your life.
Yeah, so I had no, I went to school at a fairly well-to-do private school, and so many friends
Mm.
in school, either they were actors themselves. I went to school with Laura Dern. I went to school with Jill Whelan. I went to school with all the Disney kids. And then some of their parents were major celebrities or major producers and directors in the industry. So um,
Yeah,
they were
yeah,
just normal kids. They were just friends of mine. I didn't
exactly.
look at them.
Yeah.
I remember being invited to a seventh grade party at the home of Paul and Joanne Woodward, Paul Newman.
Mm.
And he's a normal guy. Walked in.
Yeah, of
He's
course.
in a bathing suit, and he says, "Nice to meet you, John. The kids are in the pool. Go change and jump in the pool with everybody."
Yeah.
And so anyway,
Yeah.
but
I met Matt Mikkelsen once, and he was perfectly normal guy as well. So it's lovely to actually see someone in 3D that you're used to see in
yeah, of
2D,
course,
but they're just
they're
they're just
normal
like
people.
you and I, just ordinary people, and you know that better because you have been around celebrities since
Yeah, I'm
child.
not at all at any celebrity. And
Yeah.
they
So
really appreciate that. They want to be treated by normal like you treat everybody else. They don't want to be known for their stardom. They want to be known for who they are and their personality and their humor and that's what
and
celebrities.
what good they do as well, John. I think that some celebrities they really use their influence on doing some good in the world, and that is so wonderful because they can reach so many people a lot
Yeah.
more than us as individuals. But then what happens?
So then on TV there was a David Copperfield magic special.
Mhm.
And I had done magic as a kid. I was introduced to magic by my uncle at the age of 5 or 6,
Uncle
where he pulled
Wilson.
a quarter out of my ear and I was hooked. And
Yeah.
as a teenager, I would ride my bike to the local magic shop and hang out on the weekends and find the owner of the shop said, "If you're going to be here every weekend, I'm putting you to work." And gave me a minimum wage job of demonstrating magic for people who would come in. And so that built my confidence, to be able to teach adults and other kids, show them magic and do it well enough so that I wouldn't divulge any secrets. Um, and I felt empowered by that. It was a skill that I had acquired that I was pretty damn good because I practiced a lot.
And that brought you back to life again, didn't you, after?
Yeah. So as I'm watching this David Copperfield special, I said, that's what I want to do. And I think there's a private club in Los Angeles called the Magic Castle, and it's a restricted member only club for magicians and their guests.
Yeah.
And
The
so,
magic, what is it called?
the Magic Castle in
Okay,
Hollywood.
Magic Castle. I think you mentioned this in your
Yeah,
documentary as
in the
well.
UK, there's a sister club called the Magic Circle.
That's right. And I think King Charles now is a member of it. I
Yeah,
think I heard that he's a great magician.
and so am I, a member of the
I
Magic
know.
Circle.
Yeah. Okay.
But so I decided to pay the initiation fee and become a member, and I had to go through an audition, and I passed the audition with flying colors, and remember walking to the front desks, showing my certificate, and buying a gold member pin I could proudly wear, and now I was allowed to do magic inside the building.
Hmm.
but I was still a little shy. I had my facial paralysis to deal with, and so I would kind of lurk around and watch other magicians, and then at the bar I would do one trick for somebody, and but I still didn't have the confidence to sit down behind one of the impromptu tables and do 20 to 30 minutes of magic. And then another magician, who I owed a debt to gratitude. His name is Phil. And he noticed me lurking. He said, "John, what are you doing? I've seen you practice. You're good." "Yeah, I know, but I don't feel, all the second guessing. And he says, "Okay, this is the deal I make. Anytime you're ready, if I'm doing a 30-minute show and you want to come in, sit down, and do two of your best tricks, just give me a sign. And I'll introduce you, and you'll be able to, I'll warm the audience up for you. You'll do two tricks, they'll applaud, and then you can just sit back and enjoy the recognition of your magic skills, your storytelling, and then I'll finish the show." And I did that twice. And then I went, I don't need Phil anymore. I got what I need.
Yeah.
So I built my 20-minute act and started performing it. And I would go every day of the week and sit there and perform magic. But what I found was that people were distracted by the paralysis. Not in a negative way. They were just curious. Hey, I wonder, did he have Bell's palsy? Did he have a stroke? He's young. Why did why is his face paralyzed? And I
It
found
was kind of interfering with.
Yeah, I found that was distracting them from being engaged
Yeah.
and in the moment and in the magic. So I came up with the idea to introduce myself. I would say, "Hi, guys. My name is John, and I've been doing magic all my life. But in 2002, I had a brain tumor. And when they removed the brain tumor, they traumatized my facial nerve, hence the paralyzed face. But something happened to me when I was on that operating room table. Now, I'm not sure what it was because I was unconscious. All I know is I recovered. I realized I had acquired some new skills. And then I'd pause. And I'd wait for the audience to get on the edge of their chairs, wanting to know what possible skills I could have acquired from having surgeons messing around with my brain. And I would look to my right, look to my left, like we're making sure we're all alone. I'd lean in and I'd say, "Guys, I am able to manipulate people's thoughts." And then I do some mentalism, some mental magic. And immediately people were able to look beyond my face and look into my personality, look into my heart, look through my eyes and see my passion for performing. I always made the magic about the audience. It was never about me. I didn't say, look what I can do." No, no, no. It was, look what I could do to empower you to make the magic happen. And every audience member, I had them the hero of the trick. And the audience reactions were honest. I would have other magicians comment, "I don't know how you build this rapport with your audience so well. I mean, they're walking around the castle or walking around talking about you and their experience sitting with you. You just finished watching my show, but all they can talk about is how great you were and how much fun they had."
And is that after this that you started doing the TED Talk? You've got a TED Talk, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah. So I did that for 10 plus years. And then I decided, okay, what's next for me in the world of magic? The IT company was still going strong, and I had a team that could do that. So I had extra time. And I reached out to a mentor of mine in magic, my friend David.
Mm-hmm.
And he was kind of my magic coach. And I said, David, I want to build my own one-man length show, 45-minute to an hour show. And I want to start sharing my messages through my magic. You have any ideas? And David said, well, you ever think about doing a TED Talk? No. Yeah, why not? And David said, don't worry about it. I'll send in your applications. And he sent in two applications, one to UCLA and one to UCSD. Never heard from UCLA. But within 3 weeks, I got an email from UCSD saying, John, we have a slot open and you are booked as a speaker. So now the panic starts to
Yes.
go in
Yeah, be
because now I
careful
have
what
to
you wish
write
for.
a 15-minute speech, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't a public speaker then. I was comfortable being on stage, but um, now I was going to be in a room with 1,000 people
But
of
also
all
it's
ages.
different. It's different, I think, to perform because I used to do dancing, and when you come on a stage, you love it and you perform and people love it. But it's different when you capture the audience with your story, with what you're telling,
Yeah.
right? So that's
So I,
yeah.
I had I some amazing friends of all walks of life, and one of my friends, Michael, was a professional writer, and he had helped other people write TED Talks. So
Hmm.
he called me and said, John, I'm in. Let me help you write your TED Talk. And so we brainstormed for a week, and then we came up with things, and then I just had to go through the laborious process of memorizing it. And I would rehearse for friends and family, and before I knew it, the day was approaching, and my good friend Ryan, who was a film director, amateur film director at night, and he worked for one of my computer consulting companies during the day. I mentioned that I was doing this TED Talk, and he said, John, I'd love your story. I want to film a documentary on you. I was cool until I realized I would be paying with the documentary.
Oh, oh,
And
you had
yeah,
to
I had to
pay?
I had to pay. I mean, Ryan didn't charge me, but all the crew and the locations and everything else, all of a sudden now I'm scratching together thousands of dollars to produce this
Is
15
that the ultimate
document.
illusion documentary?
Don's Ultimate Illusion,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so we filmed the making of the TED Talk. It was in San Diego, a short train ride down from Los Angeles. So I came up with the idea that let's film me doing some magic and talking to David on the phone on the train. So he and a couple guys came with cameras and we filmed the train trip down to San Diego, and he filmed the making of the TED Talk. He filmed the rehearsal the night before. So we had a lot of material to work with. Um, And then we got back to LA, and he started, figuring out what pieces we still needed, and um, I was with my friend Jamie Lee working on her computer, and I mentioned to her that my friend Ryan had decided that he was going to film a documentary on my journey in my life because he found it interesting. And I'm looking at her computer screen, and I'm typing and moving the mouse. I'm waiting for her to say something, because I didn't have the courage yet to ask her the dying question. And I feel her eyes searing into the side of my head. And I'm stiff as a board, trying to get that courage. And then I hear her say, and I think she had to say it 3 times. And then I looked her in her face, and it was so inviting. And I said, Jamie, will you be in my documentary? And she goes, bleep, yes. And it was amazing. She was all in. She cleared her schedule. We talked to the director. We figured out dates where she would film. And she was so professional. She taught us
I
all.
wonder why and how.
She
How
taught us all how to be, filmmakers, and she sat there
yeah.
and just shared who I was to her and her family.
Mm.
And she knew me before my surgery and knew me after my surgery. So she, like my parents, really knew me well. And it's only a 15-minute short film, but it won all sorts of awards for best documentary.
It's made quite powerfully. It's very powerfully cut, edited, put
Yeah,
together documentary, and it gives the whole story in a
in
really,
15 minutes.
really, yeah, in
Yeah.
15 minutes, but spot on. And uh, then after this, after the TEDx talk, you started helping people.
Now I realized I had messaging. Being different is your superpower, is my tagline.
Yeah.
Because I had come through the ringer and I had figured out that my face did not need to define me if I didn't let it.
Mm.
But now, how was I going to get that message out? So while I figured that out, I started doing more magic again, and I was with this woman who was dressed in all baggy black clothes that was wearing a hat that reminded me of a witch's hat. And she was walking down the hallway, just staring at her feet. And as she approached me, I said, "Hi, how are you?" And she stopped and she gave me this look that just said, "Leave me the heck alone." And continued walking down the hallway at the Magic Castle to catch up with her group. Well, I ignored her desire to leave her alone, and I caught up with the group and I said, "Guys, having a good time?" They're like, "Oh my God, this place is amazing." I said, "Yeah, but have you seen any really good close-up magic?" And they shrugged their shoulders. And I said, "Come on, let's go." And I led them to a table in the corner, green felt on the table with 6 chairs. And I sat down, and the woman who was dressed in baggy black clothes, her name was Darren. And I could tell just by that really quick interaction that she didn't want to be there. She wasn't having a good time. She had baggage, and I didn't know what it was. So my goal for that 30-minute interaction was to get Darren to smile. That's it. That was my goal. So I made the magic during the show all about her. Every decision she made caused the magic to happen. Every card she touched or wrote something this down that I could reveal secretly or whatever. And I noticed that her body language changed. And she sat up straight. And she ditched the hat. And she started smiling and her eyes started to dance. And I could tell for the first moment, since I had met her, that whatever baggage she brought with her was gone. So I finished my show. And normally audiences would clap, they'd give me a tip, they wouldn't, whatever, and they'd move on. But this group wanted more. So I shared the story about how I had hid from cameras and mirrors for almost 12 years because I didn't like my little face. I didn't like to look at myself in the mirror, and especially in photographs. Taking a photograph flattens out the image, making the facial paralysis really, really prevalent. So that all changed though in August 3rd, 2017, when I went to my first magic convention in Las Vegas. And I was amongst the greatest minds in magic. And I said, damn it, if these great minds in magic, and I mustered the courage to take pictures with these people. And I got home and I uploaded the photos to my computer, and it dawned on me, if these great minds in magic had no trouble taking a picture with me, what was my hang up? And that was the beginning of my healing moment, where I truly understood that my face didn't matter. It was who I am. It was my passion. It was my point of view. It was my generosity of sharing my gifts of magic with other people, my stories. And Darren stood, and she motioned for me to stand. So I stood up. And she gave me one of these hugs that you don't soon forget. It's like you haven't seen your brother in 20 years. And she was holding on for dear life. And there I am, just taking it in, just being in the moment. And then she stood back and she was crying. And she said, John, I need to share something with you. 4 years ago, I had a double mastectomy because I have the BRCA1 gene. And my mom, my aunt, my sister, they all had their breasts proactively removed to prevent them from getting breast cancer. And I was the last in the family to do that.
Mm.
And my friends drugged me here. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be out in front of public because I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I didn't have any boobs. And she said, all of a sudden I'm watching you do magic and I'm doing some of the magic with you. And I realized that I don't have a care in the world. I'm completely in your world and I'm having the best time I've had in years. And then I heard your story. And it immediately made me understand that I've been hiding too by the clothes I choose to wear and the funny hats and not
Yeah.
making eye contact. And with tears running down her face, she said, John, I think you just shaved 4 years off of my hiding journey. And she made herself a promise with her friends and I as witnesses that that would be the last night she would hide. And I get goosebumps every time I tell that story.
Yeah.
Now
Amazing.
she got up and went to the bathroom to wash her face, and one of her friends is sitting there with her mouth wide open. She said, John, you don't understand what just happened. We've known Darren since college. And we've been supporting her for the last 4 years as she comes to terms with her change in her body. And you did in 30 minutes what we've been trying to do for 4 years. And
Yeah.
in that moment, I found my calling.
Yeah.
I found the reason why I was put on this earth is to use the gift that I was given by going through brain surgery and facial paralysis to help others get out of their own way,
Mm.
to celebrate who they are and make their differences their superpower. Not be hiding from them, but to say, look, world, this is who I am. This is who I am authentic. I am a human being, despite my physical appearance.
Yeah.
And that's how you find joy in your life, is
You
you
took
live
a
authentically.
really dramatic and unfortunate event and turned it to give to people and to bring joy to people, to help people enjoy their lives, to shift their perspectives about how they feel about themselves.
That became a mission. I did that often, because I received that love and I saw the aha moment in their eyes, where all of a sudden what I shared with them resonated and made them understand what was standing in their way of reaching their dreams. And to be able to empower people like that, my greatest gift. And so now in my coaching program, that's what I do for people.
Yes. So do you wanna tell people if they would like to feel more confident about, especially how they hide themselves, how they look,
Yeah,
and bring out their uniqueness and use it as their superpower, they can contact you and where they can contact you and how they can your coaching program?
Yeah, I have a really well-defined coaching program. It's 12 to 14 weeks. And first of all, we get the first couple of sessions out of the way to build rapport. And so you open up and trust me to share some of your innermost stars. And then we go through the litany of the methodologies that I used in my life to overcome my adversity. And I teach my clients those steps that they go through, one after another after another, that if they practice, they will then put their lives in perspective and figure out their limiting beliefs, what are holding them back, and allow them to break through.
And
Um,
how can they contact you? Where can they find you, John? And how can they download? Because you're not going to put this obviously at the episode description, the link
yeah.
you can
So
download.
my website is my name, John, John, Kippen, Kit as in Paul, P as in Paul, EN as in Nancy.com. But to get your free download of my award-winning book with the foreword written by Jamie Lee, my good friend, it's simple. JohnKippen.com/free gift.
Good. There you are, everyone. Do download this free book. It's such a gift to be able to download this for free. And it's only because you have been listening to John's story, which we hope, of course, that has also inspired you. And we all are here for a mission. And John has found his. I am really passionate about mine and empowering women for their authenticity as well. So we are on a mission, John, to make the world a more joyful and happier place. And I cannot tell you how grateful I am that you came and joined us today and told us your inspiring story. Is there anything else that you think we should cover before you go?
Just listen to the words that you and you have a wonderful podcast. You have some amazing guests who talk about overcoming adversity, talk about their life's mission, talk about integrity, talk about uh, living with purpose, talk about hope,
Yeah.
talk about dreaming, all those things as adults that we need to take hold of and incorporate in our lives. Whether or not you're religious or not, when people say and question, what's the meaning of life? Well, my meaning of life is to live every day with purpose, and not only for my benefit, but for the benefit of others.
Yeah. The purpose is to
Give.
what we have to others, what we know to others, so that they can build, create the life that they deserve, the joyful
Because
life.
you get back tenfold of whatever you give. You get back. You feel so uplifted by helping people.
Yeah.
Um,
The
get
more
out of
the
their
more
own
your
way.
clients succeed, the more you feel that fulfillment, don't you?
Yeah, and that's why I became a resilience and empowerment coach as opposed to a life coach, because really it's about building resilience, exercising that resilience muscle that is going to allow you to reach your dreams, prosper, and be happy.
Thank you again so much, John, for joining us today.
I've had such a wonderful time.
So did I. It was absolutely amazing chatting with you. Absolutely so much inspiration, and our minds are so much like as well. Thank you again, John.
It's been my ultimate pleasure to spend this time with you now. And I hope to your listeners that you glean some kind of inspiration and motivation, again, to get out of your own way and to start dreaming what you envision your life to be.
Dream like a child.
Dream like a child and bring back that everything is possible.
Yeah.
Nothing is impossible. They always say impossible. You break that word down into I'm
Yes,
possible.
yes, yes.
And I think that was by design.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful hanging out with you for an hour.
Thank you for joining us in I'm a Perfectionist, Get Me Out of Here podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please do leave stars and a review. Help me spread the word by sharing this with your friends and family. My practical manual, Transformation Through the Power of Quotes, will help you or someone you know get through tough times and feel happier. It is now available on Amazon paperback and Kindle. You can also check out our website, mindandmood.co.uk. Thank you again, and remember, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. Bye for now.